"You keep showing up with breakfast like you do not understand danger," the officer said at her door. "So listen carefully. The man you have been feeding is not just an old neighbor. He is a decorated military hero. And today, the entire city is coming to your porch." Nia Johnson froze with the warm paper bag pressed to her chest. Butter and eggs scented the cold morning air. Her fingers went numb, not from the weather, but from the sight of 3 military officers standing on her steps in perfect uniforms, faces serious, eyes respectful. The kind of respect she rarely saw aimed at people in her neighborhood. Behind them, a quiet street watched through blinds and cracked curtains. The same street that always watched her like she was trouble. Nia was 17, slim and tired, with a backpack that never zipped right and shoes that had walked too many miles. She had learned to keep her head down, to move fast, to avoid attention. Attention could turn mean. But this attention felt different. It felt heavy, like something long buried was finally rising. Her mother stepped behind her, or he tightened her voice, asking what was going on. The lead officer turned slightly, polite, steady, and said they were here about Sergeant Major Thomas Caldwell. Nia blinked at the name like it belonged to someone else. To her, he was just Mr. Caldwell, the quiet old man at the end of Maple Street. The one people avoided, the one they called strange, the one they warned her about as if kindness was a mistake. Nia's throat tightened as she asked if he was okay. The officer paused, then said he was alive but not well, and he asked for her. Not the neighbors who crossed the street, not the people who whispered her, the girl with the breakfast bag and the stubborn habit of showing up months earlier. Nia had first seen him on a freezing morning when her own stomach was empty. She was walking from the diner where she worked before school, the smell of coffee clinging to her hoodie. She had a small leftover plate meant for her, and she saw him hunched on his porch, blanket on his knees, eyes fixed on the street like he was waiting for a life that forgot him. A man walked past and muttered something cruel. Another neighbor stepped off the sidewalk to avoid him. Nia felt the old, familiar anger of seeing someone treated like air. She climbed his steps and offered the food without a speech, without a smile meant to win praise. She said she had extra. He stared at the bag like it was a trap, then said she did not know him. Nia answered that she knew he was here. That was all. He took it with hands that trembled just enough to reveal he had been alone too long. The next day she came again. Then again, quietly, daily, like a promise no one else made. Over time, his silence changed. He began to sit straighter when he saw her. He kept his porch light on for her, even in daylight, as if it was a signal that he was still alive. He did not talk about his past, but his body told stories. The careful way he scanned the street, the way sudden noise made his shoulders tighten, the way his eyes carried a far-off weight. Nia never pushed. She just showed up. And showing up, she learned, is a kind of courage that does not need permission. People tried to shame her for it. A neighbor warned her she was risking her safety. Kids at school laughed and called the old man a ghost. A teacher hinted she was wasting time. Nia kept walking anyway because she knew what it felt like to be looked past. She knew how hunger can be quiet. She knew that being forgotten hurts more than being poor. Now, 3 officers stood at her door, and the street held its breath. They drove her to the hospital in a clean, quiet car. Nia stared out the window as Maple Street slid by, thinking of every morning she climbed those porch steps. Every time he said little. Every time she left before the moment could turn awkward. Her heart beat faster as she wondered if she was about to lose the one person who never made her feel small. The hospital hallway smelled of clean floors and cold air. Her sneakers squeaked softly as the officers led her to a room at the end. When the door opened, Nia stopped. Mr. Caldwell lay in bed, thinner than before. But his eyes opened the moment she entered, and his face eased like he had been holding his breath for days. He looked at her, then at the breakfast bag, and his voice came out low and tired. "You came." Nia stepped closer, swallowing hard. "Of course I came." He stared at her for a long moment, then whispered words that landed deeper than any metal. "You fed me when my pride was starving, not my stomach," outside his room. Officers waited like he mattered, because he did. Nia learned then what the neighborhood never knew. Thomas Caldwell had served for decades. He led soldiers through terrible places. He pulled people out of danger. He came home with scars the eye could not count, and a silence that became his shelter. He shut the world out because the world felt loud and careless. And the world let him, because forgetting is easier than facing what sacrifice costs. That day, the military held a small ceremony in the hospital courtyard. No big show. Just flags, uniforms, and quiet honor. Nia stood behind Mr. Caldwell's wheelchair, hands steady on the handles. The crowd that gathered was not loud. It was stunned. Neighbors who once whispered stood at the edge, suddenly respectful. Nurses and staff watched with soft faces. Even the kids who laughed at Nia found themselves quiet. The lead officer spoke about service and sacrifice, about a man the country praised once and then left alone. Then he spoke about a girl who brought breakfast every day, a girl who asked for nothing, a girl who did not care about rumors. The officer said a line that made the air change. Not all heroes wear a uniform. Some carry a warm meal to someone the world stopped seeing. Nia's cheeks burned as people turned to look at her. She wanted to shrink. She did not. She held her posture the way her mother taught her to hold it when life tried to bend her. Then the moment came that nobody expected. One by one, the officers raised their hands in salute, not to the crowd, not even to Mr. Caldwell, to Nia. The whole courtyard froze. Maple Street's judgment died in the silence. The same neighbors who warned her now stared at her with something that looked like regret. Mr. Caldwell looked up at Nia, eyes wet but steady, and spoke softly, his voice carrying like truth always does. Respect is not something you demand. It is something you earn by how you treat the invisible. Nia's eyes filled, but she did not wipe them. She let them be seen. She had earned that too. Afterward, when the crowd drifted away, Nia sat beside Mr. Caldwell's bed. The room smelled clean and quiet. The morning light fell soft on the blanket over his legs. He looked at her like a man finally at peace. "Silent strength is still strength," he whispered. Nia nodded slowly, feeling those words settle into her bones like something she could carry for the rest of her life. The next morning, Nia walked down Maple Street again with the breakfast bag warm in her hands. The air felt different. Curtains moved, but this time people stepped outside instead of hiding. A neighbor nodded at her. Another offered a small good morning. The street that once looked away finally looked back. At the end of the road, Mr. Caldwell's porch light was on. Nia climbed the steps and handed him breakfast like she always did. He nodded once, the same quiet nod. But now the world knew his name, and the world knew hers. If this story moved you, comment where you are watching from and tell me the moment that hit you the hardest. Subscribe for more stories that honor quiet heroes and the unseen courage of simply showing up.